And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players, an MLS podcast. And it is official, Club Leon out of the Club World Cup, and we still don't have a replacement yet. Along with that, the All-Star game opponent has been announced as Liga MX All Stars yet again. We're going to chat all about both of these topics. It is, who's going to take Club Leon's place? How are they going to decide who takes their place? And what's up with the All-Star game? Is there any draw to it anymore? Do we enjoy it? We're going to hit all of it today. And, of course, you wouldn't want to hear me just talk about that alone. That's no fun. So today we're joined by Favian Renkel. Favian, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure of mine, and I'm excited to be on this with you. So,
Yeah, man,
excuse me.
super hyped to have you on. Like I said, and not to spoil it for our listeners, but you had a very cool idea for the Club World Cup, and I wanted to get you on to share it in its entirety because I usually mess it up when I try and share that sort of stuff. So I wanted to give that to you and let you share it here because I think it's a class idea, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. But before we do all of that, we have two segments we need to cover today. First and foremost, it's Scarf of the Week. As everybody knows, we love a good scarf around here. What have you brought for us today?
Yeah, look, I have a scarf here. It was my favorite scarf when I was just a fan. I grew up in the Bay Area. The Quakes were my team, right? So, my favorite scarf that I ever bought was this Clash kind of collab they did with the Quakes. So it has the Quakes logo on one side and the Clash on the other. But yeah, one time they sold out of these real quick. I got offered like 170 on the spot, and I said no.
Oh,
So
wow.
I should have just sold it, but this is one that I keep very dear to me, and I love having this one because it reminds me of all the times I went as a fan. So
I love it. Yeah, I got a closet of about 80 of them in the back over there, and I've got one that's the Clash. It was the MLS mix of that as well, but it's not. I think it's not quite that one, but I may be wrong. Because we're talking Liga MX today, I don't have a ton of Liga MX scarves, including Club Leon, but I do have this one here from Club Tijuana, Los
ooh,
Zolos. It is okay. It's orange. It's a different color. It meets in the middle. So we got the cool little logo
that is
right
cool.
there in the middle, which I think is unique. Um, but I don't collect Liga MX scarves as much, clearly because they're not MLS or US soccer. So we stay away from that sort of stuff. And then before we do all of that, of course, we got to figure out where Connor is. Connor today is still on his journey. So he has been all over the place, baby. And I know you might not know this, but Connor, he says he's working. I don't buy it. I think he's traveling a world. So far, I have found out he has been in the Amazon rainforest taking pictures of weird animals. He has been on an Alaskan cruise, seeing all the sights up north. He's been on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and he's been to Disney World already. Those are kind of the four that we've had so far. And today, I would have to imagine he is. I don't know. I think he's trying to pick up something like motorsports. Like I'm guessing he's on some sort of motorbike, trying to learn pop wheelies and things like that because he's just kind of crazy like that.
I mean, what about a lake? Do you think he could be like on a jet ski or something?
Oh, that might be a good call. It might be that he's definitely more of a late guy than a motor. That's a good call. So yeah, Connor, let us know where you're at, buddy. I need to know where you are. I need to know you're okay. I need to know you're all right because we miss you here and we're excited to have you back. But today we're talking Club World Cup. We're talking about what exactly happened, why it happened, and who's in the running to be replaced and how is it going to be chosen.
No, yeah. So basically, LD. Excuse me if I butcher this, but Alajuelense went ahead and they said, hey, this is not fair. These two teams are owned by the same owner. Per the FIFA rules, we're gonna take this to court, and they shouldn't have two teams in the tournament. So FIFA kind of looked into the case and then said, yeah, you're right. This is in the rules. So Club Leon, unfortunately, you're not available to compete. But honestly, this is crazy to me because they just landed James, like one of the biggest transfers in the CONCACAF region because he wanted to play for this Club World Cup. So do we see James move to a team that what is in the Club World Cup? Like, does he go on a free somewhere? Is it possible? So it's interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, what about MLS? Right? Like,
Well, yeah, I was shocked. I was shocked they didn't go for him. I thought that James was a shoe in for some team needing a DP10, and I was ashamed that nobody picked him up. But yeah, it's a huge blow, isn't it? Right? That was going to be like prime time viewing, and even if I just clicked up here
yeah,
the Athletic article, and it's James's face like in his Club Leon, like, what are we doing here? Why am I not playing, right? And
Well,
it, it,
and
it is.
also
Oh,
for
you
the
got.
fans that were gonna go to the games, right? Like you remember the Colombian fan base for Copa America, the
Oh yeah.
final, right? Like there's tons of Colombians in the United States that would love to see their best player, right? So yeah, man, that is I don't know, kind of crazy to me if you really think about it in terms of like marketing and in terms of selling tickets, uh, especially with Club Leon having James. You almost think like they should have said no to Pachuca, right? So it's just it's kind of odd that they chose the team that's probably more popular.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if that's a sporting thing, like if Leon got in last, so they were the first ones out type of thing. I'm not so
Right.
sure on that. But it was funny because my brother and my dad, I'm in South Carolina now. I'm from New York originally. They were coming down to watch my brother's a huge Chelsea fan. They're coming down for the Club World Cup because they're playing in Atlanta. The game we were supposed to go to was Chelsea Leon.
Oh wow.
And now we're like, okay, what happens there? So I kind of wanted to pick your brain, like, who's in the running for this? Is there somebody like who is kind of primed into it? Do we know kind of if there's like a short list?
Yeah, look, I mean, Club America thinks they should be in there because they're at the top of the CONCACAF ratings. LD Alajuelense was the one that brought up the case, so they feel like they should be in there. There's a lot of people that believe the Galaxy should be in there because they won the actual MLS Cup last year and not the Supporter Shield. So they should be in the tournament, as well as LAFC. They lost in the final to Club Leon. So imagine the heartbreak of, Cherundolo losing at home 1-0, and then eventually you still end up in the Club World Cup, right? So no, it's gonna be a weird one. I'm not gonna lie to you. And it's something that you know how you said it was a sporting decision, like the Pachuca gets in because they made it in before, but we're not talking about the cleanest organization here, guys. We're talking about FIFA, right? Like, so I don't know why all of a sudden FIFA feels like they need to take the high road on this one, especially when they're going to lose ticket sales. Like, if Alajuelense makes it, they're gonna lose ticket sales. Like, I kid you not. So to me, this one's interesting. I think like I said, my idea was a good one, and I think it's actually a great one because you can build up some hype for this tournament, and maybe some teams take it more seriously, and maybe some teams build up some anticipation for this tournament with those ideas that I had. But basically, in my opinion, I think Club America has a big shot, and it's a Mexican team. According to the rules, you can only have two teams per country, so technically MLS can't have another team. But then again, we're talking about FIFA here, right? So this is a thing where it's like, well, we'll bend the rules because of the decision they did for Miami. The Galaxy should have a chance. LAFC lost; they're the runner-up that year, and then I've even seen people say the Philadelphia Union because of the Concacaf kind of ratings they've had, and the Columbus Crew too. The Concacaf standings they've had the last couple of years, they feel like they should have at least a shot. And shoot, why not? Why not? Let's do it. Let's go ahead and have this crazy mini thing that I was talking about to build anticipation for the Club World Cup. Because you know what? Where's the integrity? There is no integrity. This is a brand new thing, so we can do whatever we want. So, I saw the joke saying, that's why we have Leagues Cup. So shoot, make Leagues Cup earlier. Let's see them fight for it.
Matt, I'm gonna read my definitely not pre-scripted thing. FIFA is not corrupt, and what they did to Inter Miami was absolutely fair. They earned it, and pay me now, please. No, no. So I want to get your thoughts, or I want to get you to share this idea because I thought it was really, really good. You were proposing a mini tournament just to get in for this last spot. I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, look, I mean, I kind of just thought of it on the spot, and I said, hey, what's a great way to kind of build anticipation for a tournament in a region that already has people that are not too interested in it? Why not have Club America, Columbus Crew, LAFC, LA Galaxy, LD Alajuelense, all these clubs that feel like they should be a part of it? So maybe six clubs go at it in some sort of round robin. Maybe I want to say two sides of the bracket. You give one team a bye, and then you have a semifinal and the final, basically. So I think that should be what FIFA should do to kind of I mean, I think it's the safer bet for them, to be honest, because at this point, if you give it to Club America, well, then LAFC is going to be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Well, I mean, we're the runner up. And then Galaxy is going to be like, whoa, we actually won the MLS Cup, you know? So I think the safest bet is to let people try to actually qualify on their own. And League's Cup is tough because you don't have the Costa Rican team in there. But why not just invite them? You know, make League's Cup a little earlier this year and invite them. You know, and then you could use League's Cup to fill that void. But yeah, that seems like a little bit of a crazier idea. But I think having some sort of mini tournament, maybe 3 games per team at most, is something that I would be very interested in doing. And you already have the venues, so you might as well just play them at the venues you feel like will you need the the to get hit the ground running to get the fans involved, right? So personally, Club America is going to be a draw anywhere in the country, so you can put them anywhere. But like, yeah, I'm excited for it. I think if you have an El Tráfico for a Club World Cup spot, that would be the most crazy El Tráfico, because it would be the most important El Tráfico. But it's funny because I think both of those teams are at their weakest in the last 5 years. So
Yes.
it's gonna be. I mean, the club is screwed too, right? So it's
Yeah.
just gonna be funny because all these teams are if let's say an MLS team gets in, will they get the extra TAM right now? How does that work, right?
Right.
Will they get it in the next secondary transfer window? Like, so no, this is very interesting, and it's of course it's FIFA to come mess up everything they prepared for the last 6 months, you know. So I just think it's odd the decision making now too. Like you could have done this in December when the case was brought up, right? So
Right.
to do it 3 months later, 3 months before the tournament, is something that it baffles me a bit.
It's leave it like you said, leave it to FIFA to mess this up. Like I'm absolutely shocked that the people who couldn't put on the was it the Copa America final that we couldn't
No,
handle.
that was actually Conmebol,
Oh, okay, okay. So
same light,
I've
the same
heard two
light. Yeah.
stories on this. I've heard two sides of this. So I'm still not sure exactly where it is, but it's just it's baffling, like you mentioned. It's baffling that it's taken this long. They're like, oh man, we're 3 months out and we don't know who the last team is. And then you need to organize, like you said, tickets, and you need to organize the
Right.
like. I don't know who I'm watching in
Right.
June, July. I don't know who I'm going to see play, which is kind of crazy. And that's not the face, and especially with how much hate that this Club World Cup has gotten already, it
Yeah.
is like the cherry on top for the people who are like, "We told you so," you know?
Right. Well, why
Uh,
don't they just throw a curveball? Just put Al Nasir in there. No, it's just
yeah,
like
right? Yeah, let's
just,
do it. Strategically put them on the opposite side as Inter Miami, and definitely don't
just
find a way to make sure they meet in the final, right?
let's just throw a curveball. Why not? So, like, see, that's why it's so difficult, right? Because like, what's stopping you from throwing Al Nasir into the Al Nasser into that little mini tournament beforehand, right?
Right.
Like, but then you get Ronaldo in the United States, right? So like, why not? You know, so you get Ronaldo versus Club America in LA. I would be there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like so it is interesting. It is fun to talk about. But yeah, like if you're FIFA and FIFA being as hungry as they are for, dollars and getting their stakeholders every single penny, why not just run 4, 5 extra games? Like I get it, players play too many games, but I think MLS can take a couple games off during the season. Maybe their main players. Bouanga maybe doesn't have to play 34 games this year, So personally, I think it could be done. Yes, players play too many games already, but this is a once in a career opportunity for a lot of people sometimes.
Oh yeah.
So this is if they want to take this tournament and make it into something very serious and very something or something that they really look forward to every 4 years, this is a great way to get it started. Kick off the ball, kick the ball rolling with a mini tournament for sure. I mean, shoot, now I'm just getting excited thinking about
Right.
Ronaldo. Like if they could throw that type of team in there too.
Well, I think that is a bridge too far. As I look here and see that the last time they won anything at Al Nassr was before Ronaldo stepped foot over there. So that may be a touch too far. But it's funny because I love when people are baffled when FIFA do things for money. It's like, how could they?
Right.
I'm sorry, were you living under the rock the last 20 years? Like, what do you mean, how could they? This is their entire marketing thing, is that we need money. We don't really care how we get it. What do you mean you're shocked by this? That's
Right.
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, what if they pull a special invitation guest? Like all Nasser, right? So they really can do anything, and they don't get any pushback. So, personally, you know, I gotta keep it cool because my credential's gonna say FIFA. So, uh, but in all reality, they can do whatever they want.
Yep.
And personally, I just don't see it going to Alo Alense because they're unfortunately the smallest team possible. And knowing FIFA, Club America seems like the one that would sell tickets.
Hmm. Yep. That's what I was gonna. That was kind of where I was leading for the last question. This topic was, well, who do you think it's gonna go? And I
Yeah,
think if it was done right, you're looking at LAFC and trying to
right,
figure it out with that because you're right. If it wasn't, but then you'd have to bump somebody else, right? Because if you mentioned the two club thing, and that would mean bumping Messi. Good
right.
luck with that, right? Not
Yeah,
happening.
yeah,
Um, and then you think about okay, well, Alajuelense is on the bubble there. I don't know I don't know how they kind of get in, work into this. I don't know if they were the next team up that they got beat out by this club. I don't know how that works, but if they're just like, oh wait, this isn't fair, you're going to look to replace them with a Liga MX side then because of the two per country rule, and then yeah, Club America being at the top of the standings would just make sense, right? And you're right. It doesn't matter
they
where
three
that team goes. They will sell tickets, they will make money, and you will get a lot of people through the door.
and they three-peated, right? So it's like no
Right.
question. If you're gonna go with the Mexican team, it has to be Club America, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, it'll be definitely very interesting to see how they go about it, because it's going to have a big impact on an already really frowned upon tournament structure in the first place. So definitely something to keep an eye on there. But I do want to transition here just a little bit into the All-Star game and kind of. I, for one, am not an All-Star game in any sport. I don't like the NBA. I don't like the NHL. I don't like MLB. I don't like any of the All-Star games. While they're fun, they're not tune in for me, right? MLS was always a little bit different. It's like, okay, cool. We're going to see our best players play against somebody big, right? The Arsenals, the Barcelonas, the Bayern Munichs, all these really good ones, right? And over the last couple of years, they've turned it into MLS versus Liga MX, which on the surface seems pretty cool. But when you combine it with Club World Cup, Champions League, Leagues
Right.
Cup, and now All Star Game, it's getting a bit watered down, in my opinion. But I wanted to throw it over there to you. Do you think that there's a fan desire for the All-Star game in general? And do you think that fans are getting tired of the Liga MX MLS thing from your point of view, maybe from because as we spoke, you're across the country from me, so maybe things are different over there than it is where I'm at.
Look, to be completely honest with you, as a reporter, the All Star game for me is a little different. It's a central place where I can talk to all the stars or get my questions into all the stars without having to travel across the country. So in that sense, the MLS All Star game is great for content and it's great for stories and sit down interviews, and it's kind of like a hub, I would say. But for a watchability, it's almost like as a reporter, you go to do all those interviews and everything, and then you just go home,
Yeah.
because like why am I watching this if I'm not getting content, right? So it's just interesting because you're right. I agree. I think it's watered down. I think with Messi and Suarez being on a boat last year instead of at the All Star game, that lost all the draw for me, to be honest, because I knew they weren't taking it seriously. So why should the other players take it seriously?
Right.
Um, and then all of a sudden they had a phantom injury, but they could be on a boat in Mallorca, So it's just something to think about because personally, I would be a lot more excited for this All Star game if it was against the Brazilian All Stars, if it was against the Argentinian All Stars, or if it was against even the Saudi All Stars, Japanese All Stars, right? So I think they could have took this route a little differently. I think Liga MX All Stars was great for the first 2 years it happened, but after last season, and our All Stars not taking it that seriously, I would have loved to see Memphis Depay come here with Neymar and just torch us. I would have loved it. Or shoot, some guys in the Argentinian league, maybe they impress and they get on some short lists for scouts. So I just think, in my opinion, the Liga MX All Stars isn't really beneficial for anybody at this point. I think they've already ran that. At least go away from it and then come back to it. So I don't know. I just thought maybe they could have done a little bit of a better job with finding another person. And I actually might not go this year because I'm like I already seen it twice, you know. So it's like what new as a reporter, what new content can I make you if I know that the big guys aren't going to be there, you know? Like, am I going to ask Benteke about the same things I did the last 2 years, you know? So like, it's just a little different, especially because it's all-star content. So it's difficult, especially when it's not. The best all-star, in my opinion, was in DC because of just the photo opportunities and how beautiful DC is. But Austin is a great city, but it's not historic. You know, it's not DC where you have the memorial behind you with all the players, or it's not, you know, you're not at the White House playing, you know, pickup soccer with kids, you know. So those photo opportunities aren't there. So you kind of need something else to bring that draw. And I noticed that last year when we were in Columbus, it was like, well, there's nothing really special about this All-Star game because it's Columbus. And no offense to Columbus, right? It's a smaller city than like a DC. But let's say if this was like in a Miami, it would be a bigger draw, in my opinion, just based on the MLS All Stars alone. But I think location's a big deal for this All Star game. I think you need to have it in New York, DC, Miami, LA for it to matter, or even San Francisco. Have it in places where there's no soccer team, and then maybe get those people out. You know, so it's just interesting that they went with the Liga MX All Stars again. I would have gone with Brazilian All Stars, Argentinian All Stars, shoot, even Saudi All Stars, and Saudi All Stars would have been crazy.
Yeah, you know, you had a couple of really good points I wanted to kind of expand on, right? Because I've heard everybody, and everybody being a relative term, of course, but has been, oh, bring it back East versus West, right?
Mhm.
Okay, that's kind of the same thing but different.
Is there enough stars though? Like, let's be
Exactly.
totally honest. Like,
Exactly, right? It's
you,
you're not spread, like designated player is just a title. It doesn't mean that they're a star, right? It's not somebody
right?
people will turn out to see, right? So you combine that then, and my big thing was like, oh, I always thought it was cool back in like 99, I think it was. I'll double check that, but they did an MLS America versus MLS World. So like all the
Mm,
American stars versus all of the best from around the world. But even that loses its appeal now because all of our best Americans are forced to get sold overseas because they want to move and play somewhere else. So even that is like, okay, what do we got? We got Brad Guzan in goal, Jordan Morris leading the line. Like,
right.
okay, great. Who's going to turn in for that, right? So then I've never really
Well,
heard anybody talk about. Oh, go ahead.
that actually doesn't work in the NBA, right? The
Right.
NBA does the American versus the world, and the world just destroys. So it's
Yeah.
like, and they're having an issue too with the NBA. So yeah, I don't know if I like that too much because it doesn't work already for the a bigger entity, right?
Right, right. And like I said, I think it's cool on paper, and it was cool back in '99 when it was like, okay, we don't have a lot of the big, the biggest names from
Right.
around the world anymore. But I've never quite heard somebody talk about like a rotation of the best from other leagues. Like everybody's always, I've heard the Saudi one, and I've heard Liga MX, of course, because it's here. But this idea like getting somebody from Argentina or Brazil, like the best from there, because you're right. First off, if you think about the Brazil's bringing home all of their national team stars, right? You got Neymar there, you got Marcelo who was over
Right.
there, you got all these other. Imagine those guys coming to play for a one-off game against their friends here. That'd be awesome. You'd sell that out in a second. And Argentina
Right.
too, like you mentioned, the idea of, oh, bring these guys over. I mean, how many of the Argentinians have we pulled that we now have flipped for, high eight-figure profits, right? I mean, Almada is gone. Peter Martinez has gone, even though he didn't perform very well here. But you brought on so many players that you could then highlight in this group, be like, oh, he's going to do something for us one day.
Right. You
That'd be
imagine
huge.
you imagine the Argentine All Stars with Driussi and Velasco playing for them. You're gonna
Right?
get fan bases of Austin and Dallas to tune in because they
Right.
want to see how their former players do. So I don't know. I just think it was Liga MX was a great idea to start, but I think we need to have other leagues and other leagues, even the Turkish league, right? Like other leagues that are in that bubble, right? So no, that would be awesome to see. And I bet you a team like Brazil or like a league like Brazil or Argentina, when they see the dollar size involved, they're gonna say yes. You know, why not? Like a Brazilian All Star game in Florida, in Orlando, you don't think it's gonna sell out
Right.
60,000? Yes, it will, right? Like
Yeah.
100%. Neymar has an opportunity to come, of course. Yeah, so or even like in Vegas, make it in Vegas, right? So like you have a Legion Stadium where they used all the time for international games. It's a hub where people come anyway. You have, in my opinion, I think they need to start making the All Star game in a place that's different. So instead of I'm sorry, I hate to say this, but like Ohio or Austin, like great stadiums, beautiful venues, great fan bases, but how do you get the appeal of a person that lives in Miami to fly in for an All-Star game? In my opinion, you almost should have it in Vegas every year, and then you just have the Brazilians or the Argentinians come in and make it a whole ordeal. Because even Copa America in Vegas I went for Copa America, that was insane, and that was Uruguay versus Brazil. Maybe not the two biggest fan bases in the area, but man, oh man, was the city buzzing for that.
Yeah, man, and that was the other thing I want to touch on was this idea of playing in non-MLS locations, right? Because then, yeah, you're attracting people who may not ever have seen your product or have any desire to see your product. And if they're 2, 3 hours away and one of the teams that are visiting signs a big Colombian player or a big Brazilian player or something like, oh, I'm going to go out and watch him, right? You
Right.
open up that possibility for other people, right? I really like that idea as well. It's not something I've quite ever thought of, and especially in this time, if you're listening to this now, we have already released our episode talking about USL's Pro Rel, right? USL's Pro Rel, regardless of what it does for USL, is going to put pressure on MLS to be better.
Yeah.
And how they go about that, there are lots of different avenues to do this. And while I don't think that the All-Star game is one of those like heavy hitters, it could be something small to take them a step above anybody else. So it's super, super interesting that you said that. I really like that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like imagine a Vegas event that MLS throws. It's a no-brainer in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's interesting because it's like you're not invading that space, but you're bringing MLS to a place that has USL already, and it's a place
Right.
that you've tried to get MLS in for a while, and it's a place that you've tried to do all this stuff in. And it's like, okay, well, that makes things interesting now. Like, all right, are these people who are watching USL? And I watched USL last night, and the level's not terrible, but it's different, right? And they go and see the best of the best from MLS, like, oh, maybe that is something I want to keep watching, right? So you just start putting those questions in people's heads.
Yeah, and look, if you have it in a place like Vegas, it's maybe a little more enticing for the Brazilian All Stars to come. Hey, you guys get to go to Vegas. You guys get to be introduced to that lifestyle and to that city, or even the Argentinian one, right? So Vegas is a draw to South America. I know that for a fact because I talked to a lot of Uruguayans when they came here for Copa America. There was an opportunity for Uruguay to play, and they booked it anyway because Vegas is that type of place. So yeah, 100%. If the next All Star game isn't in Miami or in Vegas, I think it's a failure, personally.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, especially with the All Star game across all sports kind of dwindling. Like I can't remember the
Right.
last time anybody was hyped for the NFL All Star game, right? Like people drop out of the NFL All Star game. Like I don't want to play in this, and they're just like, okay, cool. Like it's just a bunch of people having fun, and that's great. Like that's what it should be about. Like that's awesome. But if you're gonna use it, go ahead and use it to your advantage. Don't use it as just a filler.
Well, one thing about the NFL All Star game that's interesting, and it kind of ties on to what I was saying about it being in Vegas, they had it in Hawaii. So it almost enticed the players to go and bring your families and play in this game, and you get a free Hawaii trip, right? So
Right.
that was a way they kind of enticed players to go. So it's interesting to see what MLS can do, and it's almost like why aren't you doing that yet either, right? Like entice Messi to go to Hawaii, right? Like I feel like we're not there yet, but maybe one day we have to entice the players to play in this game.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, eventually it'll get to that point where either they say, okay, we don't need it anymore because they're playing 150 games anyway, or we go and we look at and how we can improve it. But like I said, I think this is really, really interesting because there are so many what we call low-hanging fruits, right? There's so many things you could do right now, tomorrow, and be like, oh yeah, well maybe not tomorrow, but for the next year, that's like great, awesome, right? Like let's do it and see what happens. Because at the end of the day, I don't think you can make it much. And I'm going to use these terms lightly. I don't think you can make it much less desirable, right? I think there are enough people out in the world who are like, yeah, it doesn't do much for me, right? I'm not complaining that it exists, but I don't really care, right? So there's not, it's a low risk, high reward thing where you're like, okay, I can make any change I want, and the only thing it'll do is bring it up, and let's see if it works because I think that there's potential there, especially the only thing I hated about when they brought over overseas teams was that it was always and again, people who listen to this know I use this term lightly. It was always the Euro snobs were like, oh my God, you guys lost that much to Arsenal's preseason squad. Or on the flip side, it was, oh, it doesn't matter that your best players beat Arsenal in preseason. right? It was
Right.
never a win-win. And Liga MX gets rid of that a little bit, but even then it's like, okay, it gets rid of that, but it also means that most people don't quite care.
Yeah, I mean, Beckham and those LA Galaxy teams actually played some games in Hawaii. Now, if you go to Messi next year and say, "Hey, if we have the All-Star game in Hawaii, will you go? And will you play?" If you could get Messi to sign that he'll play, easily you're selling 50,000 in Hawaii.
Oh yeah.
Easily for an All-Star game. So, and then you would get people flying in from Japan, Hong Kong, China to see Messi too. So, yeah, I think a stadium change and then having players sign on for it is huge. And I think if you're gonna see like, hey Messi, we'll take your family to Hawaii for free. I think there's a little more incentive there too. Even though he's Messi, he can do whatever he wants, but maybe there's a little more incentive
Yeah,
because
yeah.
Beckham played in Hawaii.
And it's
So,
not a bad place to be. You're right. Like if
right,
somebody goes up and you're like, hey, we're gonna go out this way, you want to go? Okay, yeah, I'll take a trip, right? Or do you
yeah,
want to go to Minnesota?
right,
Nah,
and
you
and, and
know,
and that's why it's so weird to me with Messi. They're choosing Ohio and or in Austin. It's like, what? What are we doing?
yeah,
Like we can't push those back. We can push those back. You
yeah.
know?
You're already bent enough to get him here and do all this sort of
Right,
stuff. Like what's two All-Star games nobody cares about?
right. Like let's just move it 2 All-Star games back.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, no, that's really interesting. Like I said, it's not something I'm keeping my eye on particularly. I'm more focused on the Club World Cup stuff, but it will be interesting to see how they handle that, especially with new commissioners coming in and what they choose to do with it. But Fabian, I want to thank you so much for hopping on and chatting with us today. This was tons and tons and tons of fun. I'm just so glad we finally got to work together. It's been forever that we've been
Yeah.
kind of conversing online. The first time we've talked in person. So thank you so much for being here and tell people where to find you and what you do.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's a true honor to finally be on. I've been trying to get on for a while, and thank you guys for being so patient with my schedule and everything. But yeah, you any listener can find me at Favian Renkel. I have a little community on Threads. If you don't like using Twitter, I know a lot of people are on Blue Sky, but I was like, hey, let's just try Threads. I've tried. So my biggest thing in my career is to try to convert people into MLS fans or at least know about MLS. And if I move my content over to new social media, I feel like maybe I can get some new people to be interested in if uh, Insigne is playing for Toronto. It's been a fun ride over there at Threads. So if you want to go ahead and follow me on Threads, I am Fabian Renkel is my username, and then Twitter or X is Fabian Renkel. So thank you so much for having me on. And then I have a sit down with Miran Chuk coming out this week, so it's interesting. I find out some interesting details about the Atlanta United superstar and Atlanta United rapper or Atlanta rapper. So it was an interesting one.
Yeah, can't wait for that one. My Connor, funny enough, is an Atlanta fan, so he's I know he'll love to look at that one. But yeah, guys, go show him the love. He's leading. I mean, like I said, we're not a Threads pod, but every time I open up Twitter, he's right there. Like, and he's just breaking all of the news and all the great ideas. So make sure you go give him a follow and take in all of that stuff. And if this is your first time here with us, we are the designated players. We kind of do this sort of stuff. We just sit down and talk about our thoughts about the league, good, bad, ugly, indifferent. It doesn't matter. We share them honestly. So if you kind of like that sort of stuff, that's what we're here to do, and we'd love to have you around. But Fabian, thanks so much again for being here. Listeners, thank you so much for listening to us, and we'll see you all next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS Podcast. See ya.